I'm going to claim that whether you're doing security or reliability, doesn't matter. You're doing both at the same time. Title of the talk is Retooling Your Toolkit for that purpose. And I'm going to start with a couple of sound bites from Steve's talk, by the way, as in, if I were to state that I will improve your security, the first situation you would usually expect is to have people up in arms, no way in hell, no, not any more hoops to jump through. And my point is that doesn't have to be that way, because the only appropriate reaction to a new feature should be a yawn. Right, on with the show. And that needs to focus. Here we go. So first of all, quick overview of what's coming up. Who am I? Coming up shortly. Then the core concepts, the ideas we're talking about, and all of them will be opinionated. Most of them will be right. And then I'll finish off with a whole set of examples and actual practical guides and some open questions as well. To start with, right. Me in 6 bullets. I do platform security at Beacon. More of that later. I've been doing security for 30 years, so I have the scars from the time before Windows 95. I am above all a human first and an engineer second, so I consider usability as a prime factor. And part of that one was Steve's mention about technical debt. There's a concept of also legacy, and I take the approach that any code is legacy if you wrote it before lunch. I've been doing professional work on reliability and systems since 2000-ish, plus or minus a year. And professionally, I've been doing Linux, embedded systems and regular, logistics, online gambling, and now finance. One could argue that moving from gambling to finance merely up the numbers and change the type of people who play from their own money to people who play with other people's money. And if you're asking where do I work, or Beacon is best described as Bank Python for the rest of the industry. And there's a link there to a wonderful blog post from last November. No, I didn't write it. Nobody at Beacon did. That was a far better job. Practical matters wise, Steve left his questions at the end. I welcome questions during the talk, by the way. And any notes you have in the meanwhile are also welcome. And in fact, the best feedback I can get from this talk is would heckle again. So please feel free to probe your way. Making money in production. Yes, Steve, I know that one. Right. And this lost the focus. And people usually leave this at the end. I don't like to do that kind of tripwiring. We are hiring. Everybody who does talks is getting out of the door. If it's interesting, if it sounds like an appealing approach, or if the ideas sound like you would like to make them happen, talk to me later, please. Main themes are basically that security and reliability tend to be at odds with each other. And I genuinely claim that they don't have to be, because I consider security to be an essential facet of reliability. Also, the tools that we use, if we look at the tools, they tend to be a whole plethora of good tooling for dev tools and reliability work and observability. Steve mentioned a few of them. And then there is a set of tools for security, which tend to be more expensive, more focused, and apart from few exceptions, worse off. Which brings us to the last point, is that we take common approaches. I genuinely consider that the same tools, the same approaches, same ideas used for observing reliability and performance not only can, but indeed must be used for proper security, because there is no way to decouple the two. And what we do is just, we do it with different reasons. That's the only main difference. An example. This is something should be close to heart for Steve as well. If I do something, the site gets really slow. The question, of course, is what kind of problem is that really? First of all, if you ask your front-end team, they say, that's a back-end problem, nothing to do with us. You talk to back-end team, they have a look, that's a performance problem, which is, again, quite true. If we then ask another team, as in people who care about money, they say, that is a PR problem. Again, as Steve mentioned, there are certain flows that cannot fail no matter what you do. If you then ask an actual SRE, they have a general look at that, by the way, that's a reliability problem, you need to fix that. And if we ask a sufficiently paranoid security person, they take a look at the same problem. If someone does X and things get slow, it's a denial of service vector. What's the difference with all these? They all saw the exact same behavior. They saw the same results. They interpreted differently. They have their own agenda, their own view, own vision, their own heavy and hefty bias. Steve, it's always a network. And the main difference really is that's because we use the same mechanism, the same tooling, the same way to observe failures or observe problems, that what the tooling we use also should be the same thing. From Z, I'm actually going to pick it up right now. Any advice for someone who is new to working as an SRE? As in, I would say that, first off, read the Google's SRE book, then talk to other people, and then get burned in horrible ways in production for the next 3 years. Because I will say something truly horrible, which no one ever tells you. There is no such thing as a junior SRE. Everyone who has done SRE as a profession has been burned and has scars from half a decade of painful experience and interesting war stories. So you need experience. It will hurt, but it will get better. Eventually, you will get numb, and then you will get better in that order. Back to the talk. I'm going to take up something really divisive, as in, this is something that Steve would flag as a reliability or shift attitude. I'm going to set up this as something different. As in, if I bring up linting, what would be the first reaction from you? I expect that in any room I ask this question, I would have people go into 3 different categories. One who say absolutely no go, that is disgusting, that is awful. Others say that I love this, please bring me more of it. And the third group usually takes a look at it from the outside and says, I don't want that argument at all. And if we talk on shift left, linting is all about detecting patterns early and easily. So in a way, linting is nothing more than doing static analysis. And those 2 words carry a very heavy load. Sylvain, any language can do problems, especially spoken ones. Right, but we are in linting and analysis. If I asked you that, what is the actual difference between a linter and a SAST component, where SAST is static analysis, security, or scanner tool? My claim genuinely is that there is no difference at all. If you run a linter on a piece of code, it detects bad patterns or just off-putting code syntax, it will complain that this is wrong. Go fix it. If you give code, so that's the analysis analyzer, it detects bad patterns, known unsafe constructs, known vulnerable, or just code smelly parts. Meaning a static analysis scanner does effectively focused linting on nothing but security concerns. And furthermore, both tools will be noisy as hell. You need to configure each one to suit your own purpose, your own needs, and teach them what is meaningful. And you have to, above all, override the errors they send back. A linter complaining, this is bad syntax, is unhelpful. A linter that tells you, as in use this syntax instead, so it becomes readable, it is helpful. If you use a security scanner that complains, do not use this construct, it is bad, it is unsecure. It is, again, unhelpful. And that is what every SaaS tool does in isolation and by default. If it tells you how to fix it and what the bad thing is, it is actually helpful. The first one is annoying. Second one becomes something, once you fix it, you understand, and anyone who copies code from Stack Overflow will get the same explanation automatically from your CI. Meaning you go Stack Overflow, you get complaints from a compiler or a linter. You go to your code base, you get something that actually works and it's okay. The other one, this is something which is, I believe, very truly in the realm of reliability. Immutable infrastructure. Which is it? Is it a reliability feature or a security feature? Again, I claim it is both at the same time. Let's take reliability first. We go with cattle over pets. We want immutable infra so that there is no long-term state. We want to have hosts and systems that are easy to provision and even easier to remove. We want all the configs in each of them to be always completely codified so that you can do the same thing and repeat over and over again. Computers don't get bored. They like getting the same things done over and over again. Humans get bored and they won't change. And also, if you have immutable infra, modification after spawn is a problem. You have now someone who has mucked about in your system and actually broken it, or at least potentially broken it. Same infra, from security perspective, is that systems are all alike, or at least mostly alike. We never adapt to a state. We force one, and we expect that to be the case. Anything that deviates from that known state is a problem. Again, configs are codified, and modification of a system in security context is not a problem, but an incident. Someone changed the system, most likely behind everyone else's back. And that also brings a really interesting downstream effect. If you can eliminate hosts and kill them off on a snap of a pair of fingers or just click of a tongue or a button, it means that hosts are never persistent, meaning anyone who actually attacks, there are 4 pillars of attacks, as in there is recon, there's compromise, there's persistence, and there's exfiltration. If persistence becomes impossible, it means any attacker needs to re-compromise systems. They need to get their tools in place again. They need to compromise systems again and again, each time potentially leaving traces of themselves. Meaning observability from a security perspective is also essential. So if you can make it easy enough to make persistent services and transient hosts, system itself becomes automatically harder to attack because you cannot expect your foothold to ever last there. So in a nutshell, whether it's security or reliability, the question itself is irrelevant or even wrong. We use the common tools for most part. We have the same goals, again, for most part. But above all, we have aligned goals, and this is almost always the case. The main difference is that it is the mindset what matters. What are we doing and why? Why, as in, when something fails, why did it fail? What do we want to fix it? Why is the fix itself necessary? Or why is the underlying concern a problem? Something that is a security concern usually is a reliability concern as well, especially in Steve's way, because as security breaches will increase and enforced disclosure is becoming more and more a thing, there is always a PR problem. The bigger the breach and the longer you had to wait to disclose it, the worse the news is going to be. And finally, is that, as I mentioned, we want to use the same tools. The idea really is that we want to surface relevant data for our purposes. And most of the time, data surfaced for security needs is also a very nice way to infer reliability data and overall performance. Meaning, if you're doing one, you are doing both, even if you don't know that. And with that, that was my talk. Thank you very much. And now, because we had 2 questions here and 3 heckles, now I'm leaving the floor open to any other questions.
Hey, Mika, I've got one actually. Is that a common view in the security world that both are the same, or is that not your own view, but something that you've discovered for yourself? How does the NetSec community react to reliability in general?
Actually, that's a good question. So the question really is that are my opinions industry-wide? And I can say that they are not industry-wide, but they are wide across security engineering, and they are especially wide across all of the modern guides. So if you talk to people who do modern DEF CON, modern black hat talks, people who actually work on security as an engineering discipline, they take this approach. So this approach is becoming more and more a sort of a common standard, but also we are seeing that the DevOps mindset, mentality, the SRE approach to security is getting a foothold. And in that also, I would say that the move to cloud was an aid. You cannot expect to have long-lived hosts anymore, and you cannot expect to have physical access to systems. So using common tooling, it becomes more of a common, I would say, signifier.
Thank you. That makes sense. It's good to hear that everyone is converging.
At least I hope they are, and I will do what I can to make sure that it does happen, or at least it has less restrictions down the line.